Most businesses do not fail because the idea was bad. They fail because nobody followed up. Nobody tracked the leads. Nobody stayed disciplined long enough for the business to become real. And that is a hard truth, but it's one of the clearest things that came out of my talk with Adam Olsen. Because look, we live in a time where everybody has an idea. Everybody wants to build something. Everybody wants more freedom, more income, more impact, more control over their future. But the part that people do not always want to face is this. The dream is not the business. The work is the business. What else is the business? The follow-up is the business. The structure is the business. The phone call you don't feel like making, that's the business. The system you keep avoiding, that's also the business. And the discipline on the bad day, now that's the business. So Adam has built a $1 billion real estate business, but what I appreciate in this conversation is that he did not make it sound magical. He brought it back to the basics. Answer the phone, follow up, track the lead, serve the client, operate from abundance and not scarcity. Keep your energy high when the market is uncertain. Double down when everybody else pulls back. And that right there connects directly to what we talk about here on the ThriveWell journey. Because rebuilding a life after disruption is not just about wanting a new direction. It's about becoming the person who can sustain that direction. And there's a difference there. There's a difference between wanting success and identifying as someone who follows through. There's a difference between being inspired and being organized. And there's a difference between having a vision and building the structure that can hold it. So Adam also talks about something that matters right now. The market, it's shifting. People are nervous. Business owners are watching numbers change. Leads are slowing down. Costs, oh man, they're rising. And in moments like that, most people retreat. And in moments like that, the separation usually goes to the person who keeps doing the work while everybody else is trying to figure out if it is safe. This conversation is definitely about real estate, but it's bigger than real estate. It's about execution. It's about service. It's about discipline. It's about not letting scarcity leak into the way you sell, lead, build, or show up for people. So as you listen, pay attention to the gap between the idea and the follow-up. Pay attention to what Adam says about abundance and what he says about doing the basics when everybody else is chasing shiny objects. Because sometimes the next level is not hitting something new. Sometimes it's sitting inside the thing you already know to do.
You know, I feel like people, they've got great dreams. Maybe they have a great idea, but they fall short in the execution phase because most people don't follow up and they don't follow through.
Back to that, right?
Or they're not there to help the client. They just want to get a transaction sold. And so I tell all of our agents, you know, look, you have to provide value. You know, if someone makes a comment, and this is the psychology piece of it, every industry is different, but you will notice trends throughout.
So Adam, we just got into it, man. And I'm really, like I said, I'm glad that you're here. And you really said something that in our conversation real quick is that, you know, you got to a $1.5 billion business by just really going all in. And
yes.
You noticed, I mean, you said that, you know, some people don't, you know, they have the ideas, but they won't go all in. And like myself, you and I, we both don't have kids. And so like for me, I go all in as well. Like I'm up, you know, I try to go to bed at 10:30, but next thing you know, it's like 12:30. It's like, oh, it's not that, you know.
Almost every night, right?
Almost every night. I try, man. I do try. And so is that the magic for you?
It is 100%. You know, I feel like people, they've got great dreams. Maybe they have a great idea, but they fall short in the execution phase. And, you know, I'm blessed. I'm younger. I just turned 30 in May. So been in the industry since I was 18 and, you know, had somewhat of a safety net in a sense, right? With my family, lived at home for 5 years and just grinded it out. But where I see people fall short, whether it's in the real estate industry, entrepreneurship, they started a new business, regardless, is they just don't quite go all in, right? They've got Johnny's practice, soccer game, birthdays, friends are inviting you out, right? If you don't have kids, all of that is great. And certainly if you have kids, you should go to their games and events and award ceremonies and all that. I'm not saying not to. I would 100% do that. but you have to pick and choose. Either we want to be successful and we want to grow the business, which requires hours and you working on it,
Yeah.
or we want to do these other items. And so early on, my focus was solely selling real estate. How many people a day can I talk to that are interested in buying, selling, or investing in real estate? Whether it's commercial, residential, didn't matter. Price point didn't matter. A transaction is a transaction, right? And I think, you have the individuals that aren't willing to go all in, or like in our industry, you have people that, that's a $50,000 lot. I'm not willing to drive and show it, or take the time to pick up the phone and call Michael, right? Explain the transaction because it's a small dollar amount. When in fact, a lot of my smaller dollar amounts have turned into larger transactions. So it's interesting, in that concept. But early on in my days, I, went all in. I missed multiple parties, hangouts, birthday parties, events, you name it. And it did make me a little bit distant, right, with my friends, even so much as my family. But the business took off, and here we are today. And I run into individuals in the real estate industry and just entrepreneurship in general that want to grow a large business. They have a great idea. They've got a great plan,
Yeah.
but there's no execution. There's no follow through. And that leads into the next, segment of it is you have to have follow through. I can't tell you how many times on my side of the business where we're reaching out for quotes, for information, survey requests, etc., and there's no follow through. We send a request, we have to call the company 2, 3, 4, 5 times to finally get the bid, and 2 weeks later we have the bid, or we have the answer, or we have the information that we requested 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And in our business, we track all of that. We try and stay on top of the agents that are within the company to make sure that they're following up.
Hey, TTJ fam, just a quick interruption before we keep going. If the ThriveWell journey has supported you, challenged you, or helped you see your life from a different and more powerful place, take a second to support the work. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, share this episode with somebody who may need it. And if you're listening on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast, leave a rating and a review. We would really appreciate it. See, that simple action helps this message reach more people who are rebuilding their life, their purpose, and their direction. We're not just growing a podcast here. We're creating a space for real transformation and growth. So stay connected and keep walking with us on the ThriveWell journey. Now back to the podcast.
But, a prime example of that, Michael, is if you were to call, me today to sell your property, we're going to have that conversation. I'm going to go straight for an appointment, right? I want to get an appointment, meet with you, look at the property. Once we've done that, I'm following up with you the next day. Hey, Michael, it was great to meet you yesterday. You've got a beautiful house. I know we went over the numbers. You wanted to talk about it, right, with your wife, your family members. Think about it if it's just yourself. Any follow-up questions, right, from our meeting yesterday? And how do you want to move forward? And there's no follow-up. So, another prime example of the follow-up is there was a gentleman that I was calling on for roughly about a year. He inquired about selling 3 different properties. All 3 were commercial tracts. Tried following up, no response, no callback, no text, no email, nothing.
Yeah.
For probably 7 to 8 months, almost a year. And I wasn't calling him every day, right? But I'd call him once every 2 weeks. Early on, I typically put people on a 3-day follow-up. And then from there, a weekly follow-up, bi-weekly or monthly. And so, after so many months of no response, he was on a monthly follow-up, right? Because we're not getting a response. Fast forward, followed up with him for roughly about a year. Fast forward about a year after that, the guy calls me out of the blue and says, "Hey, Adam, finally ready to sell this property. The reason why I'm calling you is I actually, back when I met you at the property on Montgomery Road, you followed up with me for about a year after. And I met with 3 agents, you and 2 others, and no one else followed up with me after the initial appointment. And I can't tell you how often that happens, right, to me, whether I'm inquiring on a car, whether I'm inquiring, about a bid for a service, whether it's landscaping, whether it's a new driveway, whether it's roofing, whether it's site plans for a development we're working on, doesn't matter what it is, and there's no follow up and there's no follow through. So I think if anyone from this podcast could take away one important piece of information, it is to follow up and follow through and make sure that you're tracking the inbound leads right to your company. You have to have some sort of CRM that it needs to be organized. And if you, the business owner, like in my case, my business, if I'm not organized, how do I expect my staff members to be organized or the agents working for me to be
Right,
organized?
right.
So it's a trickle down effect,
Yeah.
but we have to have the systems in place, right, in order to do so. And I
Man,
think that's where a lot of business owners fall short.
yeah, I agree with you. Adam, you said like I don't know, like 1,000 pounds worth of gold, man.
Yeah.
Um, so like just going back a little bit, like one of the things that you said is, I think a lot of people who love the idea of entrepreneurship, they may be in love with the idea of the business, and they may have the idea, but then they're in love with the idea, but the work that brings that idea into reality, now that's a whole different game. And
It
I think when
is.
you kind of feed into it, when you really, when you talk about follow up and follow through, that's part of the work of making a business. You're of service, or a product or whatever it is. And I think one of the things that we're dealing with in this podcast business, in addition to the podcast management, is structure, organization, follow up, and follow through. So I think those are really like pertinent and important things that can really like take an idea to just another level in the world of business. And when you talk about real estate, I know that's you have to do that because that
You
is
do.
business.
Right. In any business for that matter, right?
Hmm.
And if you don't have the systems in place in the foundation, it's not going to tick. And so you can run all the ads in the world, you can get all the leads, but if you're not willing to pick up the phone and call them and continually call them, right, to
Hmm.
solicit your service or to get an invoice out or a bid, there's no money coming in.
Hmm.
And so it all works hand in hand. And I think a lot of business owners forget that, even myself, right? From time to time, you have a bad day, you don't want to call people. I know if I follow up with 100 people a day, I'm going to consistently keep my pipeline full.
Yeah.
Right. And the other thing that we see with entrepreneurs and more importantly, real estate, the real estate industry is people have the great idea, but they don't want to put the time into the business.
Yeah.
Meaning, they quit their full time job, or maybe they were in another career path and they decide to switch, and start a business or, get into real estate or whatever they're doing. Selling
Hmm.
insurance doesn't matter, but they lose the structure. When they were employed, they were showing up at the office at 8 a.m., leaving at 5, right? And there was somewhat of a structure, and they get into, real estate. I see it all the time with agents. They get into real estate, you call them, it's 9 a.m. I've been at the office since, at least 7, if not 6, or potentially a little bit earlier. And it's 9 a.m. and it sounds like they just woke up,
Yeah.
and then you see on their Facebook story at 2 o'clock that they're at Kroger or HEB, in my neck of the woods picking up groceries. And
All
I'm
right.
like, okay, Sally, we were just talking yesterday and you were complaining that you have no business. I called you this morning and you just woke up at 9 and it's 2 o'clock and you're at Kroger. Like, how do you expect to close any transactions or get any business when you're not working?
Right.
And I think that, a lot of people get into entrepreneurship or start a business because they think they're going to have more time. And the reality is potentially, but you've got to build it to where you have more time,
Yeah.
right? You've got to have the staff in place to be able to handle it. And if it's just you and an assistant, or just you and your significant other, or whatever the case is, and you're in the startup phase, there is no other individual to run it. It is you.
Hmm.
You're the marketer. You're the one making the post. You're the one running the ads. You're the one filing the taxes. You're doing everything.
Everything.
It's not just the business side. And I think a lot of people miss that concept when they're starting a business or they're transitioning right into a sales role to where they're in control or they're a contractor. And so you have to have the discipline and the structure. And, I tell our agents to pay attention, right? When they're having a conversation with Michael, the other half of sales is psychology, right? And how people respond. And I think a lot of business owners could benefit from that. If you're communicating with your staff members and they respond in a way that's not favorable, maybe it was the delivery of the conversation, maybe it was the words that you used, or they just have different goals in life. And so it's your job as a business owner to really figure those out. And more importantly, as a sales contractor, right, to really understand that, hey, I've called Michael and delivered these news, but he kind of freaked out. And how do we evaluate that? We evaluate it by looking at the conversation. What did you say? What did Michael say? And what could I have said? How could I have said this differently to get a different response?
Yeah.
And so it's a bunch of analyzing and perfecting the systems and making sure that things are working. But ultimately, if you're not going to put the time in, if you're not going to put the work in, nothing else matters. And so there's a lot of angles, but it all works hand in hand, in my opinion.
Yeah.
The first part is to get the leads, right? Or the potential business. And then the second part's the follow through. But it all goes hand in hand. If you didn't have those ads running, then you don't have any leads to call.
Yeah.
Right. And so, unfortunately, when you're just starting out or you're newer in the space or newer in the industry, or, you're a smaller company, we're still a smaller company. Even though we have multiple staff members and agents, we're still a small company relative, to the industry. And, you've got to put the time in. Most people don't want to put the time in. I mean, I can tell you, we were talking just a little bit before the call, my days would start at, 5:30, 6, 7:30 a.m. in the office, right? And I'm not leaving there typically until 5, 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night. And I come home where I'm at now, and I'm in front of the computer again, typically until I'm asleep. And yes, I have fun. I go to birthday parties. I, go to different events. It doesn't mean you can't have a life, but there's a difference between, I'm going to be successful and I want to be successful. The I want to, a lot of times, will fall short in their pursuit of capturing right business. You can want to do anything, but without putting actual work behind it, nothing's going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's that part right there is really speaking to their own identity of I want. Well, we can, like you said, we can want all day,
Right.
I want a glass of water versus I have a glass of water and I could do anything with it, with what I want. But I think that when you have the idea and you want this and want that, that's really outside of you. But if you make it a statement, I am going to be, or I am, I am whatever it is. I am an entrepreneur. I'm wealthy. You're really speaking to the identity and saying, this is who I am right now, even though it may not look like it. But my actions follow suit to the words that, I say.
Exactly.
There was there's somebody that says, we have two tongues, one in our mouth and one in our shoe. The one in the mouth, they lie. The one in the shoe, it tells the truth. You know, if you say that I'm on a diet, but then you walk to the refrigerator and you get that cold pizza at the middle of the night, guess who's telling the truth? The shoe.
Exactly. 100%.
Yeah.
But it's true. And it's true in all aspects of life. Whether you want a better relationship with your significant other, whether you want to be on a diet and lose weight, or you want to be successful in business, you've got to put the work in, you know? I mean, if I want to be macho man, right, I've got to go to the gym every day.
Yeah.
Not just for a week and then, stop, which is normally what I do. So
That's funny. Yeah, I think that's probably practical for like a lot of people. That's what they do.
it is.
They start strong, but then it kind of deflates. Man, but you,
And that's what happens in business,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
I mean, people, I see it often in the real estate industry. They want to, be successful, close transactions, so they start strong. They get no's, they get, their teeth ticked in, right?
hmm
They have issues with transactions and they kind of flutter and give up and everything goes downhill. And you've got to keep going. It's like yesterday, I didn't have the best day, but I stayed to the office till 5 o'clock and I called, roughly 220 sellers.
Oh wow.
Um, in one day starting at 9 o'clock. So it is 100% possible. Now I got voicemail, right?
hmm
On, let's say, 80% of them. So that's what saved a lot of time is, being able to leave voicemails. But you have to do it, whether you want to do it or you don't want to do it. You have to put your big boy, big girl pants on
Yeah.
and make those calls and dials. And yesterday, I wanted to leave at noon. No doubt about it. I was done. I was not in a good headspace. I was pretty negative, thinking thought wise, and you just have to power through. And
hmm
I think a lot of people fall short there. I struggle with it, even with thousands of transactions sold. You know, over 40 pending currently, just myself, not including the team. There are agents and brokers and teams around the country that would die to have that many pending, right?
Yeah.
Not literally, but figuratively
Figuratively
speaking.
speaking. Yeah.
And so, I'm blessed in that sense, but I have bad days too, just as much as Tony Robbins does, just as much as you do, just as much as, the most successful individuals in the world. I mean, Elon has bad days,
hmm
right?
hmm
Everybody does. And you've got to power through and accomplish, you know, whatever you need to accomplish that day and not say, oh, I'll do that tomorrow. The worst thing you can do is say, I'll do that tomorrow. Just
Oh
get it
yeah.
done today and then move on to the next task.
Yeah. Well, there's no tomorrow. Like really,
There
like
isn't.
there's no
And
tomorrow,
it's not guaranteed
and it's
either.
not guaranteed when it does get here. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
I think that's really key as well, because I think when people say that, well, I'll get to that tomorrow, I'll get to that tomorrow, I'll get to tomorrow. Well,
2 weeks go by.
2 weeks go by, a year goes by, and you're like, wait a minute, tomorrow has
Yeah.
come and gone. How many days? And I still didn't do that thing I said I was going to do.
Yep.
Right. But you have really, like in the calls and the things that you're talking about within real estate, you have the temerity to keep going and making those calls. Like, what is it? What is it that had you to be this person, to build this kind of business that you can share with other people?
Man, it's a tough question. I've definitely learned as I've gone. There's no doubt about it. It's a great question. I think a lot of it drives from my early childhood. I lost my father at a young age. I was 4.5 when he
hmm
died in a car accident, and I watched my mom raise an 8-year-old, my older sister, and then a 4.5-year-old myself from that time, all the way up to, today,
hmm
right? And she was a psychologist, ironically, and she worked for school districts and then also the Texas prison system,
Oh wow.
and ended up quitting those jobs. And she finished out. My dad was building a storage facility in a town called Cleveland, Texas, small town north of Houston on US 59.
So there's
It
more than
was
one Cleveland,
almost
huh?
yes, yes,
Okay.
and there's multiple actually, but the she finished that facility out, sold it, and then she built another facility and sold it, and then a third facility and sold it.
Oh
And
wow.
so I've watched my mom over the years, completely transition from her degree job to being an entrepreneur. I loved as a kid going out to the concrete pours at, 3, 4 a.m. And neither one, my dad didn't grow up with a silver spoon. My mom grew up middle class, and we we did well growing up, but we weren't, anyone of any sort of power or monetarily speaking, right? We
Hmm.
lived in a decent house, but it wasn't like it was $1 million home or anything crazy.
Hmm.
But we grew up comfortable, and I think a lot of it came from watching my mom, raise us and operate the businesses and deal with my crazy self and all the fun trials and issues that we had during my school
Were you
days,
the
to
problem
say the
child? Is
least.
what I'm hearing. That's what I'm hearing.
I, I kinda. I wouldn't say I was a problem child. I was never in trouble with the laws or
Okay.
anything like that. But I always, ironically, had some issues with teachers,
Hmm. Okay.
and interesting scenarios. Um, Sometimes I was wrong and sometimes I was right, but uh, it's part of the problem when you grow up with a mother that knows TA guidelines and rules. It's a little harder for
It's
the
harder
teachers
for
to
you.
get away
Yeah.
with things. Yeah, and I grew up outspoken too. I didn't have a dad, so if if
Hmm.
if, if anyone was going to say something, it was myself, right?
Hmm.
And I grew up that way. I also grew up, in a house that you respect people no matter their age or who they are, where they come from. And, unfortunately, or not unfortunately, but there are some adults that feel like, they can talk down to someone, right, that's younger than them,
Yeah.
especially in the school district. And I hate to say that because I love teachers. They're incredible and definitely who have built America. But just like any profession, there are some, different opinions, and there are some good ones and some bad ones.
Hmm.
Just like real estate, I'm not perfect. I make mistakes every day. Same thing with any other industry.
Right.
And there were definitely some disagreements, and that's where the issues came into play. But uh, I think a lot of it came from that. And so when I got in the industry, it took me 7 months, right, to sell my first property.
Oh
And
wow.
from there on, it just happened. And so I had to teach myself that discipline, right? I'm a young kid, started getting my license at 17, got my license obviously at 18. Um, 7 months, I'm just going into the office. I mean, I don't know anything, I you know, I worked at Kroger previously. Like I'm not skilled in real estate sales. Definitely not in technology, even though I grew up in that era. Um, Technology to some extent, but not, in
Because you're like
depth.
a millennial, I guess, right?
Yeah, I'm a millennial. And so anyways, once I got that first taste of money, right,
Hmm.
is when I closed my first transaction. I made, $5,000 or $7,000, which was a lot of money, for an 18-year-old to make at once, even though
Yeah.
it took 7 months to get there.
Yeah.
And I was just like, wow, this is crazy. And then I started paying for leads from Zillow and some other platforms, and I realized that, wow, if I can make phone calls, return phone calls, answer my phone, and send searches, like it's that easy. In a
Hmm.
sense, it's not, but it is,
Hmm.
because most people don't follow up and they don't follow through,
Back to that,
right?
right?
Or they're not there to help the client. They just want to get a transaction sold.
Hmm.
And so I tell all of our agents, look, you have to provide value. If someone makes a comment, and this is the psychology piece of it, every industry is different, but you will notice trends throughout. Like I have clients that'll say, "Hey, Adam, I'm sure you're tired of me. If you don't want to work with me anymore, that's fine, because I've shown them, 50 houses." And my automatic response is, Michael, look, I don't care if you buy a property or you don't. It doesn't bother me one way or another. At the end of the day, if I do my job and I provide value and a service to you, whether you purchase a property or you don't, you're always going to remember me. And more importantly, you're going to refer me. I
Yeah.
did two things there, or a couple of things there, not just two. One, I reinforced to Michael to, hey, send me referrals, right? Your family, your friends, anyone that asks about real estate. Number two, I relieved the pressure from Michael
Hmm.
so that he doesn't feel like he has to be rushed. And number three, I also made it very apparent that I don't care if you buy a house or not. I'm
Hmm.
not there to just make a transaction and a sale. I'm there to provide value, be your friend, and help you, throughout the process.
Yeah.
And I think that's lost in a lot of industries, where people are just really trying to go for the sale. And there's no doubt Adam wants to close Michael, right? That's the only way I make money. But if I present it in that way, it just gets a total different response.
Hmm.
And so it's the psychology behind it. I tell my agents this all the time. Look, even if you need that deal to close or that next transaction, you operate in a place of abundance,
Yes.
never a place of scarcity.
Yes.
When you operate in scarcity, you get scarcity.
Hmm. Yeah.
You could be my only transaction closing this month, but I'm not going to let you feel the weight of that burden.
Yeah.
And so often in sales, you see that happen.
Well, I think that's really important, especially just that key, um, operating in a space of abundance, not scarcity. I think that energy right there is so important because it gets you different results day
It
in and day
does.
out. I had a lead come through and they had an idea for a podcast. And after I, kind of read through their uh, the questionnaire and they left, they said, I have this great idea because I am homeless. I was like, okay, well,
Wow.
wonderful. And so I couldn't respond back to him that. So I got his email and I wrote him back personally. Well, if you're homeless, that means you won't be able to afford our services, but this is what I can do for you. And so I just gave him just a list of things that he can do, how he can actually start a podcast in this homeless situation. And it was just like, I didn't want to come from a space where if you can't pay for our services, then, bump that,
Yeah. We're here to help
we're
you.
here to help you. And I think that
Yeah.
is a place where I think you said it right. It's kind of lost because everybody's trying to get a sale, as opposed to being of service. And then, whatever comes from that comes from that. And if you stand on that principle, being of service and operating from a space of abundance, so many other things can show up for you that's really non-linear to what you think would show up for you.
It is. You're 100% correct. Good karma out in the marketplace always comes back tenfold. An example from our end to piggyback off of what you just said is I tell our agents too all the time, look, if someone inquires, or maybe it's a friend or a family member, and they're like, uh, let's say you, for example, Michael, you call me, you say, hey, Adam, I'm looking to sell my property, but my neighbor wants to buy it. We've already worked out the deals. How should I do that? My immediate response is, hey, Michael, thanks for calling. I'm going to type up the documents. Just send me over your emails,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't owe me anything. It takes me 15 minutes, right, to type up a listing document. They're filling the blank. Um, there's multiple things that happen there. One, Michael's going to call you for everything he needs going forward. Two, he will never forget that you helped him right through that transaction, even though he had it teed up. And I have multiple times where people are like, hey, I'm going to pay you something regardless.
Yeah.
We, when you operate in a place of an abundance, everything changes. Now it can be a double standard. Like today I had a client, he was referred to me, and we leased out some properties in Conroe for him, and they had some issues. He's been through a few brokers. We finally leased it all up, and he's an active buyer investor, and he's always buying stuff. I think he's under contract on 2 or 3 properties currently. One of them's like a $20 million deal. I wish we had it pending, right? Don't
That's
we
nice.
all?
Yeah.
But we don't. He's working with someone that brought him the transaction. But anyways, he calls me today and he says, "Hey Adam, I'm buying this property in Houston. It's kind of like the one you leased up in Conroe. Do you think you could lease it out?" And I laughed and we'll just say his name is Bob. I said, "Yeah, Bob, we can certainly lease it out. Send me the information." I said, "I'm more than happy to help, as you know, but um, on the other hand, too, we do need to do some real transactions together."
Of course.
Because what can happen if you're always willing to help and go the extra miles, people will, unfortunately use and abuse you.
They'll
He's
try
not
to,
trying to do
yeah, they'll
that.
try to run it.
Yeah, and I don't think he is. We would still make money on it, but my point behind it was, hey, we can lease all your properties out, but we want to help you buy some property and sell some of your properties too. And I know you got 3 others under contract right now, so just keep this in mind, in the next transactions. But people remember,
Yeah.
they remember how you made them feel, and they remember
Hmm.
when you helped them when they needed help the most.
Yeah.
And I'm always willing to help an individual if they've got a deal teed up that they just need someone to look over or bounce ideas off of. I always tell our clients phone calls are free.
Hmm.
They'll say, "Oh, I'm sorry to bother you. I know you're not making any money on this, but X, Y, and Z." And phone calls are free.
Hmm.
I'm more than happy to help or share my opinion on something because it comes back tenfold.
Yeah.
And people don't realize that. I can't tell you how many times in this industry I've had people call me with those exact issues, or they need help just typing up a transaction, and they're like, well, I called my family friend realtor, but they wanted to charge me $1,000. I just need someone to review this doc. I'm like, send it to me. I'll review it and give you my opinion in the next 30 minutes. I don't need anything.
Hmm.
They always call back.
Hmm.
And I don't do 100 of those a month. There might be 2 or 3,
Yeah.
right? But people are so focused on, I've got to make this transaction. I've got to make $200 here, $500 here, that they forget about the big picture,
Mm.
you know?
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how many referrals I've gotten from it. Large transactions too,
Business
because
runs
you're
off
willing.
referrals.
It does, because you're willing to provide value and you're willing to go the extra mile. And there's so many people that just aren't willing to do that.
Yeah. I mean, in the world of real estate, you are. I mean, you know what you're saying, and you've in the last 12 years, you've hit 1.5 billion. So for anybody that's like looking in the real estate world right now, especially millennials and whatever the next generation, whatever they call themselves, I have no idea.
Gen Z, Gen X,
Yeah, Gen Z, Alpha, Data, Gamma,
FE.
whatever. I don't keep track anymore.
All the same.
It's all the same. We're people, hey? Just younger, older, whatever. But there's I had a guy on. He's from New Zealand, and we were talking about real estate, and we were talking about kind of the state of real estate right now. And it's different for everywhere, but so we have one aspect, and I really want to get your perspective on this, where you have people, because you've sold little properties to bigger properties, and or residential luxury and all that kind of stuff. And so we have now corporations wanting to buy mass real estate and things like that. What is your take on that? And what does that look like for buyers and even the people that want to get into the world of real estate? Is that a competition? What's going on there?
It's a great question. I think that institutional buyers, I mean, obviously they have a leg up right on everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But, we saw that during the COVID era. And, it's interesting in a sense of, the COVID era was driven by a lot of factors. You had the U.S. government pumping a lot of money into the marketplace that
Mm-hmm.
was getting shuffled around, right? People were taking those checks and buying things, even small stuff. It's the economy is a trickle down effect.
Mm-hmm.
When you go to the gas station, you're supporting, those individuals that work there, the gas station owner, the suppliers, right? There's a lot of people affected when you buy a pack of gum.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just, the gum manufacturer. I mean, it's the attendant at the gas station's paid, the owner, right, of the gas station is paid. The supplier is paid, the manufacturer's paid, the people that work for the manufacturer, and so it's a trickle down effect. So
Yeah.
with the money pumped into the market, obviously elevated, right? The market, people were spending money, they were buying items, which indirectly also helped inflate prices.
Hmm.
But furthermore, if you remember back then, you had a lot of companies that were in the marketplace then. You had build to rent, um, uh, large institutional money where they're developing neighborhoods to rental homes and then packaging those and selling them to other large institutional buyers or private buyers. You had home builders, which still to this day package 4 or 5 homes in their developments and sell them to investors if they sat on the market for too long. Happens every day. Whether those are institutional or private, most of them are private.
Hmm.
But nonetheless, it happens. And then furthermore, back then you had companies, Realtor.com, or not Realtor.com, sorry, I think Redfin, Zillow, HomeLight, um, and I'm forgetting the other major beast. There's Zillow and then 2 or 3 others. I can't think of their names, but they were buying a lot of properties, right? All of those models had died out because they didn't make
Hmm.
any money. If you look at Zillow's purchasing, they purchased a lot of property. Same with, I believe it's Redfin, but I don't think it is. There's two. Open Door. Sorry, that's it.
Okay.
Open Door. So Open Door, Zillow, and there's a third one. I can't think of the name, but anyways, they're buying all these properties, and they're buying them from individuals like myself and you, Michael, and your podcast listeners. Right? They're wanting to downsize, upsize, whatever the case,
Yeah.
and they were paying these insane prices. I mean, I've seen back then, of course, you don't see it anymore today, but I saw companies within that time period overpay by 20, 50, even $100,000 and lose their shorts,
Not
sell
the
it for
shirts, but the
30,000
shorts.
less. But that was
Yeah.
a huge driver of our major inflation in the
Yeah.
marketplace,
Yeah.
right? Um, in addition, with the money being pumped in, and then in addition with just inflation, you had dollars being printed, which, um, is a good thing and a bad thing when it comes to inflation.
Inflation. Yeah.
And so I think all of those things together really, raised home prices through that era. Among the demand for consumers like yourself and myself, realizing, hey, my house price has gone up by 100 grand. I can sell it and then buy, a nicer home, or I can sell it and profit and buy a smaller home, or, I can sell it and move out and live on 20 acres because I don't have to go to the office anymore and we're doing it on Zoom.
Yeah.
So you had a lot of that going on. Um, Institutional buyers will always be there. They've always been, in the marketplace, whether it was, the early 2000s, the 90s, or all the way to today. But I think, it's a tough standard, and it's a hard question because, if those institutional buyers unloaded everything that they own today, it would flood the market. We'd probably experience some issues, especially when it comes to pricing.
Mm.
Um, in our marketplace in the greater Houston area, things are still ticking along, but it's a lot slower, right, than what it was during the COVID era and even after. I mean, it's been slower for the last couple of years. We have seen a slight increase in transactions. However, we've seen a massive increase in available listings.
Mm.
So to the seller's mindset, it really hasn't changed anything because we're not seeing the traffic that we need through the door. However, there are more transactions happening. But you look at it from a perspective of, let's say, 3 years ago, there's 5 homes in the neighborhood and there's 3 buyers.
Hmm.
Well, the 3 buyers are probably going to look at all 5 because there's only 5, right? And
Yeah.
let's just say they're all in the same price point, around 300 grand. Well, you fast forward to today, there's 15 properties on the market in your price point in that neighborhood, and there's the same 3 buyers. Maybe there's 4. Well, the chances of them looking at all 15 are probably slim.
Hmm.
So they're going to pick their top 3 or 4 or 5 that they want to look at. They're going to look at those, and the other 10 are left standing. And so that's the issue that we're up against today. Yes, there are more buyers in the market. We're seeing more transactions close than last year or the year before
Hmm.
in our regional market. Can't say that for the entire nation, but it is still, in a sense, a buyer's market of sellers not realizing that aspect.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. I talked with a client the other day. Their price point is around 450. It's a really nice house with a super nice patio, built-in kitchen, the screens, the whole shebang. Um, but there's probably 15 or 20 just in their neighborhood in that same price point. And then he did a 15-mile radius across from his address, and there were over 300.
Oh, wow. Wow.
So when you look at it in that perspective, it's just, things are selling, but it's kind of a toss up, to say the least. I mean, it is a hit or miss market, and I see it across the board. We own the Commercial Professionals, which does a lot of retail centers, industrial, retail development. We do a lot of developments for D.R. Horton, KHOV,
Okay.
SJP Capital, 4 Star, just to name a few.
Hmm.
And we'll do 2 or 3 developments a year. But I mention that to say, we do restaurants and all different types of businesses, and it's pretty consistent across the board. So, if you're an entrepreneur or business owner and you're listening to this and you're upset that maybe you're not hitting your sales projections this year, or, you need to make X amount and you're a little short, everyone's in the same bucket
Mm.
from who I talk to, right? They're experiencing issues. Maybe their costs have gone up to do business, cost of food, cost of materials. Maybe they're having staffing issues, right? Just like we were talking about the bad day earlier, everyone has these trials and tribulations throughout their business journey or their entrepreneurship journey. And we just have to buckle down and figure out what the root cause is and try and find a solution as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
But everyone is dealing with these same issues.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, like, from, 12 years worth of just knowledge about the market, and how you see it now, like, what would you say for anyone that is from real estate owner to any kind of business owner when they're faced with those kind of issues? I know you said kind of really like buckle down and create a different strategy, but what would you say to them, like what their strategy could be in a market that is kind of volatile or whatever?
I think you have to really understand what's in your pipeline, right? What your projections are and what
Hmm.
we're currently spending. Um, and it depends on what the issue is, right? It could be a lead flow issue. So, to give you a perspective, the last 2 or 3 months, we've seen anywhere from a 10 to 15% dip month over month in our lead count.
Oh,
It's
wow.
actually first time in 12 years that I've experienced that much of a decline. It's concerning.
Hmm.
It's a situation that we're keeping an eye on, right?
Yeah.
To see if this is a tall tale of what's to come in the future, or if it's just a regional issue, or maybe it's people are busy, they're not thinking about buying, selling, investing in real estate,
Hmm.
which is very much true for this time of year. Um, we just went through May where there's college graduations, high school graduations,
Hmm.
kindergartner graduations.
Yeah, right.
Everybody's got a graduation,
Everybody's got to graduate.
in today's day and age. And then you've got into summer, you've got vacations, mission trips, you name it. So May is always hit or miss for us in that instance. I'm a
Hmm.
little shocked, even to this day. In June, we're anywhere from 10 to 12% down on leads, which is concerning. But, when I talk to other agents in the marketplace, other large teams or brokers are all experiencing the same thing.
Mm,
right? And so at that point, we realized that, hey, this is not an issue that we're dealing with. It's not isolated. It's not a us problem. It's an everybody
every
problem.
problem. Hmm.
And from there, we have to look at a few different angles. At that point, we look at our expenses, kind of pre-plan to see if there's anything that we can trim, or cut to try and conserve money. Um, Reposition. And then there's, the angle of how do we get more leads? Do we
Yeah.
need to be more creative online? Do we need to do more open houses? Do we need to do more email reach out? Do we need to be making more phone calls than we already are?
Hmm.
Right? All of these questions are questions those business owners are going to have to ask themselves in their particular business to find out the root cause of what moves the needle forward.
Yeah.
Furthermore, it has always been, a down market is something no one can control, and you're never going to outmarket the next guy to close more transactions in a down market. So previously, when we've experienced issues similar to this, maybe a little shift in the market, people were nervous, right? I'm out of the Houston area, so anytime oil and gas takes a dip up or down, people freak out,
Hmm.
and the marketplace freaks out.
Hmm.
Um, but same with COVID, right? People were kind of scared. I'm not going to lie, I was scared, right? We all were for the first, few months, and even furthermore after that. But back then, it was a little different. I was also younger and more ambitious, not very cautious. um,
Yeah, I know that world.
and I doubled down. I'll be very transparent. Taylor ran all of our online and social media marketing then, and
Mm,
he did a very good job. We have a large following on Facebook and a lot of clients that way. Roughly about 93,000 followers, 85 to 75,000 of those are active on a Monday through Friday basis. And then we run paid ads, right? Because real estate's boring, especially in the day and age of influencers. We're not out there dancing and doing all the crazy. I wish we could, yeah, or I wish we did, but I'm not that tech savvy. And it's hard to find quality individuals that really know what they're doing in that sense where you're not breaking the bank.
yeah.
But anyways, we would double our marketing. So when COVID
Mm,
hit, if we were running 3 back-end ads, we doubled it to 6. If we were posting 5 times a day, we double it to 10, and we
wow.
just doubled down. Same with outbound reach out. I'd increase ad spend. I'd increase our Zillow spend amount. Everyone would be like, Adam, you're crazy.
Yeah.
I would conserve, be cautious. You grab market share when everyone else is scared,
Makes sense.
right? So all these other companies are pulling back, and you look at some of the largest companies in the world, and it's what they did. People are
Hmm.
scared. They're not spending money in the marketplace. They're not. Um, you know they reshift their focus, whatever the case is. We doubled down in
Yeah.
those instances, and I will tell you, it's a little harder for me to do that today. At that time, I did own a home, but I didn't have a bunch of investment properties, and I didn't have as much responsibility as what I have now.
Hmm.
Now I look at it from the lens of, okay, if I had kids, and I had all these other responsibilities, I may not have been that bullish, right? Because we've got other things we need to pay for in
Right.
case shit hits the fan.
Right.
Um, but it is a huge part of what got me, where we are today is doubling down when everyone else is nervous, when everyone else is hiding in their house, when everyone else is pulling back their marketing dollars or something's not working. I would double down. I would do more outbound reach, and it worked. It worked for me. Um, you know, I would caution you though. What we're dealing with now is you know a it is an opportunity, um, but there's also the double-edged sword of if people aren't buying, if they don't have money to spend, you can market all you want, but unfortunately nothing's going to change, right?
Right.
And this same concept applies in 2008. The people that saw 2008 coming, that maybe had cash reserves, what did they do? They went out and bought property in my space for 10 cents on the dollar.
Mm-hmm.
And 2 years from then, cashed in big time because they were able to forecast and see, hey, everyone else is scared and running away from real estate. They don't think real estate's a good investment. So they're cashing out, taking the money they can get and going, putting it in the stock market. I'm going to go in and buy all these properties up, sit on them for the next 2 years, and then turn them into a profit. The same concept applies, right? With the doubling down on the marketing.
Yeah.
And so it's really figuring out your industry and knowing the psychology behind it too, which we've talked about a few times,
Mm-hmm.
because every industry is different. And there are different strategies. For me, this strategy worked, but I'm marketing right to the consumers, to people at mass. Whereas a steel manufacturer that's marketing to suppliers, that's a different conversation. That's a different marketing ploy than what we're doing. And so it really depends on the industry. But I think there's a lot of good insight in that conversation that someone could take to any industry and kind of reinvent the wheel.
Yeah. You have to test. And I think, one, you just, through 2020, you had the balls to do it. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
And which I mean,
Yep.
that's what it takes sometimes. And I think that
Yep.
when you just double down and did what you did, it worked. In hindsight, it worked out for you, and that's really great. I'm glad you just shifted there. Go ahead.
It's very hard to operate in a place of abundance, but I've never been a guy that is like, hey, I only have X amount coming in. Let me play it safe. I'm going to keep playing the game, right? The chess game keeps going, whether you're down to your last cue or not.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to keep going. And sometimes it's just getting to the basics. I think people need to hear that as well. The basics, right? Email marketing, phone calls, cold calling. A lot of people, they get in and they see all these new shiny objects that is going to make them, this money or help them follow up with the leads or the new AI system. All of those are great. We use all of them.
Mm-hmm.
But, sometimes you just need the basics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, there's a lot said there. The whole, the shiny object thing, people chill. Okay.
Yes.
We get inundated with all the things, and then we think the
Yes.
things will answer the thing that we need answered. And then the thing that we need answered doesn't get answered because we got all the things, the shiny objects. And then we're all inundated and confused, and then still trying to figure it out. I think another golden nugget is that really get back to the basics. And if you have a business and you have this idea and just slow grow, test what you got to test, get to the basics and not try to pull it. Listen, I'm the one that's like, this works, maybe that works, maybe. And then I'm like,
we all are.
You know what?
I've done it too.
Yeah, man.
Even to this day.
Yes. And it's like, okay, none of that worked. I wasted this much money and I'm still here. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so, I went through that phase, and one of the things that worked for me was subtraction, like serious subtraction, and then figuring out what really worked for what we're building. And but yeah, you're right. I mean, just really get to the basics, and I think that one of the things is when we're especially doing social media and marketing, things like that, you are, based on these notes here, is the number one real estate team on social media in Texas, ranked by Property Spark, which is really great. And that's from just as you were sharing what you were sharing. I'm like, that's really in your DNA. It feels like they're really intrinsic to you to do what you did to get where you are. And I think just from what I'm gathering is that you just went all in and said, this is what it is. And then you figure it out as you go.
Right. And on that note, with the social media, real estate's been a little diluted over the years. But 12 years ago, I mean, at least in our marketplace, there really wasn't anyone doing, video walkthrough tours. We were doing those where we're walking through, talking about them.
It's a big thing now.
We did neighborhood tours. We did business interviews. Business interviews are the best, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because everyone can hate Adam, but they love going to Michael's restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
That's the best restaurant in town. And Michael, when you call, the restaurant, say, hey, we want to feature you. We're going to do a video interview, showcase your restaurant, then run paid ads on social media. And by the way, it's no cost to you, right? They'll do it hand over fist.
Yes.
And this applies to any industry, right? You can do the same, whether you're an insurance agent, whether you're a pest control company, whether you're a locksmith. It doesn't matter. It's getting people to remember you,
Mm-hmm.
whoever you are and whatever you're doing. And the best way to do that is to immerse yourself in the community, furthermore help other individuals in the community and become like a digital mayor. And that's what we tried to do. Now in today's day and age, I'd say the last 5-6 years with TikTok, they've gotten a lot more creative than just your typical walkthrough business interview. They've got some great storytelling going on in those videos, or very creative, fast shots. And unfortunately, we've got to get a little bit more up to speed with that angle to continue to grow. But the foundation is there. We have a large Facebook following. Our Instagram, unfortunately, we got kind of attacked by bots. We had roughly about
Crazy.
60,000 followers, and we got infiltrated, man, and it just really wrecked our page. We have like 100,000 followers, but it just totally messed everything up. We went from 60 to like 130 within a matter of a week, which was bots. Somehow someone wrecked us in that sense, or hacked us. And I was going to can the page because, it didn't really work very well. And then it just sat in idle for a couple of years. And then we had a third party that told us, hey, you should, I know that page got attacked by bots, but, you still have a large real following on there. You should reactivate it and just use that. And so we have, but it's just not the same. Either way, regardless of what business you're in, getting creative with video, with TikTok style videos, maybe walkthrough of your manufacturing facility, interviews from your staff members, interviews from your customers, client testimonial videos, showcasing the area, the businesses, storytelling is extremely important and a great way to take your business to the next level. And I see I'm in the real estate space, but I see a lot of agents and brokers around the US doing that. I don't see pest control companies doing it. I
Mm-hmm.
don't see septic companies doing it. I don't see electricians doing it. You might see one or two here and there in some random state, but it's not often. And I think if business owners would really captivate towards, social media and online, they will see an immediate difference in their bottom line. And it's so easy.
Yeah.
I mean, an electrician, right? You need them for everything electrical, in a sense, in your house and your commercial properties,
Mm-hmm.
etc. The amount of
Mm-hmm.
business you can get from that is immenseful. Versus as a real estate broker, like, it's not necessarily a one and done, because people move every 3, 5 to 10 years, typically speaking, in today's market.
Yeah.
But it's a one and done. If I was selling you know plate covers for an electrical outlet, or you know office chairs or anything like that, those are happening every day, all day.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so much business that an individual could capture out of just being present, being funny, and seeking attention, right, from the marketplace. And furthermore, early on in my career with the social media marketing, everything is an analysis to me. You probably have figured that out, and it's the psychology, right?
Yeah.
And so I was running all of our ads for the longest time, roughly, the first 5, 6, 7 years of being in business. Ran everything. Now
Yeah.
I don't touch any of it,
Good
but
for you.
I,
Lucky for you.
thank goodness,
Yeah.
right? Because Facebook is always changing. All of the
Oh my
platforms are
God. Don't even
changing all
talk
the
about it.
algorithms in the back end, and so. But I would analyze, and sometimes it was the price point, sometimes it was the property, sometimes it was the location, sometimes it was because this one had a pool and this one didn't, or yeah, the price was better, whatever the case is. We would make posts, and I'd say, okay, this one reached 60,000 people within 5 to 6 days, but this one reached 130,000. Why?
Mm,
Was it the way that I text? Was it the photos that I chose?
yeah.
Was it because I interacted with all the comments immediately? Was it the location? Was it the area? And I tried to use that, right? Take that information, what I learned from each one, and reuse it and learn. And so, I also realized that when something big in the marketplace happens,
Hmm.
there was a hurricane one time that came in. This crazy story here. And there was a hurricane, and I-45 was backed up.
Mm,
There was construction though too, so that was part of the issue. Part of the issue was construction, and then the other part was a massive influx of traffic from people, evacuating the coastal and Houston areas.
hmm.
And on the bridge across 45, I pulled over and I got out and I took a photo of just line of cars for all you could see, and I posted it on our Facebook page. And that post reached almost 1 million people in 2 days.
What?
Thousands of likes, comments, shares, because we were the digital news of the area. Had nothing to do with real estate.
Right.
Had nothing to do with anything that we were doing. We were just being informative in the market. Hey, if you're traveling up and down 45, be careful, take an alternate route, whatever the case is. Another great story is we did World Series ticket giveaway, and
Nice.
World Series tickets for good seats. We bought them early. They were $2,000, which is a lot of money, not
Hmm.
cheap,
No, it's
right?
not.
Not cheap, but you can spend a lot of money on Facebook ads and not reach a lot of
I
people.
still not reach a lot of
You
people.
can
Yeah.
spend a lot of money on Google and not reach a lot of people.
Yep.
So at the time, we were spending a couple $1,000s a month in social media marketing, right? Because we have a large following. Probably at that time, before we did the first giveaway, we had probably about 25 or 30,000 followers.
Cool. Okay.
We did a World Series ticket giveaway, $2,000 for the ticket. And keep in mind, we're spending probably close to or over that every month in advertising, because we've grown. We've got multiple agents, we've got staff members at this time, so we can afford to do that. It didn't start that way.
Hmm.
I started like everybody else,
Bootstrap.
clenching my butt cheeks over spending $100. You know what I mean?
Like
Or
what?
$50 or 25.
Yeah.
And that post gained us about 30 or 40,000 followers
Wow.
in a matter of 3 days.
Wow.
All local to Houston,
Mm.
right? Because that's our
It's your
marketplace.
market. Yeah.
We reached 3.5 million people in 3 days. You can't buy that
That's extraordinary.
for $2,000. You could never replicate it ever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ever. And so for anyone listening and not sure if this will get out before then, but the World Cup is a huge opportunity.
When's the World Cup?
The soccer games, right?
Oh,
That are in Atlanta,
it's happening
LA,
right now.
and then it's happening right now.
It's happening right now.
And
Oh,
so
yeah. Your episode will be out in the next
huge.
couple of weeks.
Yeah. So but anything like that, NBA finals, those are a great opportunity to help grow your following in your local marketplace and pull attention to where, we can get lucky creating great videos and great content and reach that amount of people, which is the preferred method. But we can also create a lot of buzz with items of that sort.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And being forefront. We can create a lot of buzz of new things happening in the marketplace. What I would stay away from is obviously politics or anything involving, criminal activity, or,
Of
we
course.
want to stay away from the negativity and all that, right? We don't want
Well
to post
said.
that, hey, they're shooting SWAT teams over here, and
Yes.
wherever we're at. That's probably not the best angle if we're trying to attract clients and customers, but all of these are ideas and things that we've used to help grow the online following. So
Yeah, Adam, I think that just the knowledge that you brought to today will help our audiences, entrepreneurs, individuals that, are really just kind of high level, I guess you would say, with their energy and what they want to bring to the world.
yes,
And those who are, dealing with life and want to really reinvent life after some kind of disruption. And I think that what you have brought would really feed into their lives, and as far as, wanting to do what they want to do around entrepreneurship and just rebuilding their life. So it's really key. And I think the last thing that we talked about, I love the term, man, digital mayor. Man, that's some more gold right there. So
it is.
really, I would love to spend more time on that, but I want to really just encapsulate the conversation here and bring your words, your last words, the podcast this time. If you had to, kind of bring everything to a close and share something as your last words, what would that be to somebody listening or watching?
I, I think you just said it, right? High energy. And I cued in on that because on Saturday I was at the office, and then Sunday I was at the office. I was out of town 2 weeks ago, and so I've been playing catch up.
Mm-hmm.
And Saturday and Sunday, my plan was to call my sellers, right, and give them an update on their listing, because I haven't talked to them in roughly about a week. Some of them I have, some of them I haven't. But I went to bed late Friday night, got up early Saturday, just didn't feel the high energy, wasn't upbeat like I am today. And then same on Sunday. I got computer stuff done Saturday, made a few calls, did what I had to do. Sunday, I was going to call the sellers, update them so that, Monday I can get other things done. And Sunday, I'm at the office. I make a few phone calls, and I'm just like, man, I'm not feeling it.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I chose to stop calling is because I didn't have that high energy level, and sometimes we have to stop and ask ourselves, who would you like to talk to? Who do you like to do business with? Is it the guy that, that calls you to give you an update on your listing, and it's like, hey, Michael, yeah, we had 2 showings last week, and yeah, or is it, hey, Michael, we had 2 showings last week. One said that they were interested. I've been following up with that agent, and the other one's not interested, but we're going to keep marketing it, keep putting it out in the marketplace. Do you have any questions, anything I can help with, right? Those are 2 different conversations. And so, not only are we evaluating other people, but also ourselves, and we've got to put that high energy out into the marketplace. And all of these things, right, that we've talked about today, I have to remind myself of.
Mm-hmm.
Just like you do, just like every other entrepreneur, right? Because it's easy to fall short, or to fall into the trap of, whatever it is. And so, approach everything that you're doing with an energy level that people respect you and they feel it, because they can tell. When the few people that I called on Saturday, even Sunday, one of them said, well, Adam, you just need to get some rest. And they said that because they can tell in my voice.
Mm-hmm.
They can tell that I'm not here. They can tell that I'm tired, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we don't want to give that impression to our clients. In some cases, it's hard to avoid it, but in a sense of, I'm going to call 200 people today, maybe I should not call 200 people today, because I'm not there, and I don't want to bring in low level low level energy and low level output can also affect the other
Yeah.
individuals. If I showed up here and was like, oh, Michael this, oh, Michael that, it probably would have been a bad call for both of us. But we're both high level energy. We're both smiling, we're having a great time, and
Yeah.
it's a different conversation.
Yeah.
And so going back to what we spoke first on, everything goes hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
If we're not running the social media ads and we're not the digital mayor, we don't have any leads to call. If we're not following up with our leads currently continuously, there's no business to close and no money coming in. And if we're not having educated, high level conversations with these individuals and in a positive manner with a happy smile on our face, right? It all goes hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I would leave everyone with is evaluate where you're at in your business, really put a plan together, more importantly, execute. Don't, fall into this system of we strategize, we plan and nothing happens, and the last item is adapt and adopt. Right. There are so many tools out there that we could utilize: AI, ChatGPT, Claude. Adapt and adopt and learn them so that you can use and stay ahead of the marketplace.
Yeah.
Talk with your competitors. What are they doing? Go to that event, figure out what those individuals are doing and how you can get to the next level. And more importantly, look outside of your current marketplace, like real estate, obviously is mine. I pull ideas from manufacturing companies, from electrical companies, from all different types of companies, because, structure and systems, everyone's got to have a CRM.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's got to have structure and systems. And, the same with online and social media marketing. I'll see videos or ad content or ideas from other industries that have no relation
Mm-hmm.
to real estate. So look outside of your industry and really pay attention. And that's a lot of items to leave someone with. But I can't say enough how hand in hand everything goes.
And
So
yeah, that is the key, man. So that was the cliff notes, really, man, of the essence of this conversation. And I think that what you brought to the conversation is key for people that are that's already in a business, whether it be real estate or any other business, or really wanting to start a business, and be the
right.
entrepreneur that they say that they're going to be, that say that they are,
Yep.
and not want to be, because you can be wanting for
Exactly.
life, as Adam
Yes.
says, and wanting won't get you what you really are creating for yourself. Adam, man, thank you for being here. Thank you for
Anytime.
sharing everything. Anytime, yeah, we'll call on you again.
Yeah.
For you to be here.
We'd love to do them.
Awesome, man. And I know you have developments and things going on in your area. So if anybody that's listening from Texas or Houston and that in the area, they can connect with you. Do you want to throw your website out there? Because I know we'll have it in the description.
Yeah, it's adamolsenteam.com or thecommercialprofessionals.com. You can find us on all the social media platforms, and then you can also find my personal page on Facebook or Instagram, Adam S. Olsen. We'd love to work with you. Love to help you in your business. Don't hesitate to reach out. And thank you so much for having me, Michael. It's been a pleasure having this conversation and learning more about you as well. And we'll stay in touch.
We'll stay in touch. And as we always say, let's make thriving our new normal, and we'll see you next podcast.